The void of space was eerily silent, a stark contrast to the chaos about to unfold. Admiral Dorian Raines stood at the bridge of the HSS Retribution, watching the tactical display flicker with the positions of enemy vessels. The Galactic Dominion had thought humanity was weak. They thought Earth was just another world to conquer, another species to subjugate. They were about to learn otherwise. The Dominion had been at war with the Teralis, a reptilian species with an empire spanning hundreds of systems, for centuries. It had been a slow, grinding conflict. Battles were fought over the same systems, back and forth, like an eternal game of cosmic chess. But when the Dominion turned its eyes toward Sul, demanding humanity's submission, they had made a fatal miscalculation. Humans did not submit. Humans adapted. Humans fought. The war had started with skirmishes, pirate attacks, ships disappearing near colony worlds. Then came the blockade on Mars. The Dominion thought it would be over quickly, but they hadn't counted on humanity's sheer, relentless will to survive. Now, Earth was answering in full force. "Admiral," came the voice of Commander Nathan Solis from his station. "The Dominion fleet is holding steady in the Lagrange point. Defensive formation. Looks like they think they're ready for us." Admiral Raines smirked. "Then let's show them how wrong they are." The human fleet moved in like a storm. Sleek, dark warships, their hulls coated with adaptive camouflage, shifting to the darkness of space. Dominion sensors, tuned to detect energy signatures and movement, struggled to keep up. By the time they realized the attack had begun, it was already too late. The first wave was brutal. HSS Fury, HSS Nemesis, and HSS Warhammer led the charge. Kinetic rounds, traveling at relativistic speeds, punched through Dominion shields like wet paper. Plasma bursts lanced out, cutting through enemy formations. A Dominion cruiser exploded, its debris scattering into the void. They had never seen anything like it. Humanity's technology wasn't the most advanced in the galaxy. Their ships weren't the largest. But they were fast. They were unpredictable. And most importantly, they fought with the kind of brutal efficiency that the Dominion, accustomed to slow, drawn-out wars, had never encountered before. The Dominion flagship, Trelax Honor, sent out a desperate distress signal. Reinforcements were already en route, but the message was clear. They weren't going to last that long. Raines stood unmoving, his eyes locked onto the holographic display. "Bring the railguns online," he ordered. The Retribution's massive twin railguns powered up. The Dominion had seen energy weapons before. They had seen torpedoes. But they had never faced something like this. Humanity's railguns were devastatingly simple. Massive slugs accelerated to unimaginable speeds, tearing through enemy ships with raw kinetic force. The first shot fired. A Dominion battleship in the center of their formation took the hit straight through its core. A second later, it was gone, reduced to a field of expanding wreckage. Panic spread through the enemy fleet. Their formations broke apart. Dominion officers, trained in hierarchy and rigid tactics, were not prepared for an opponent who could read their movements and counter them with brutal, calculated aggression. "Admiral," Solis called again, his voice laced with disbelief. "They're retreating." Raines folded his arms, watching as the enemy fleet scattered. Some tried to run. Others simply surrendered, shutting down their weapons and broadcasting distress signals. A minute. That's all it had taken. "Let them run," Raines said coldly, "but make sure the message gets out. Earth is not to be trifled with." The battle was over. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Dominion's retreat sent shockwaves across the galactic front. Fleets that had once feared nothing now scrambled to reassess their strategies. The news spread like wildfire. Humanity wasn't just another minor species. They were something far worse, an enemy that didn't fight like the rest of the galaxy. They fought to win. On board the HSS Retribution, Admiral Dorian Raines stood before the massive holographic display in the war room. His officers gathered around. The battle had been a resounding success, but he knew this was only the beginning. Commander Nathan Solis was the first to break the silence. They won't take this loss lightly. We humiliated them. Their honor demands retaliation. Raines nodded, his expression grim. Exactly, and that's why we don't wait for them to hit back. He turned to Major Lillian Carter, the head of intelligence operations. What do we know about their nearest command centers? Carter, a hardened officer with years of Black Ops experience, tapped a few commands into her tablet. The display zoomed in on the star system Velka 9, a heavily fortified Dominion outpost. Velka 9 is their strongest forward base in this region. If they want to strike back, this is where they'll regroup. Then we hit them first, Raines said. We send a message loud and clear. Earth doesn't wait for the storm. We are the storm. A murmur of agreement rippled through the officers. This was how humanity fought. They didn't play defense. They took the fight to the enemy. Solis, still analyzing the data, frowned. Velka 9 isn't just a military outpost. Civilians live there. Dominion loyalists, sure, but also refugees and non-combatants. Raines exhaled slowly. The room grew silent. This was war, but humanity wasn't a race of conquerors. They didn't slaughter indiscriminately like the Dominion had when they raised colonies on the outer rim. We target only military assets, he said firmly. If we cripple their command structure, the civilians won't even be a factor. We do this clean. Carter nodded, but there was a glint of something else in her eyes. She had seen too many wars, knew too well that there was no such thing as a clean fight. The next few hours were a blur of planning and coordination. The fleet moved swiftly, navigating through slipstream corridors to arrive at Velka 9 undetected. The Dominion had barely begun regrouping when the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. It was an ambush unlike anything the Dominion had ever faced. Stealth bombers bypassed defenses before their sensors even registered the attack. Railgun rounds ripped through supply stations, severing the Dominion's logistical backbone. Precision strikes disabled communications, cutting Velka 9 off from the rest of the fleet. By the time Dominion forces scrambled to respond, it was already over. The HSS Retribution hovered ominously over the shattered remnants of the station. A transmission request came through. The face of a Dominion admiral appeared on the screen, his reptilian features twisted in rage. "You dare strike us like cowards?" he snarled. "You hide in the dark, strike from the shadows. This is not war. This is dishonor." Raines leaned forward, his voice ice-cold. "You misunderstand us, Admiral. We don't care about honor. We care about winning." The transmission cut out. The Dominion knew now. Humanity was not just another species to be bullied and conquered. They were a predator, and the hunt had just begun. The aftermath of the battle left Velka 9 in ruins, its once proud Dominion stronghold reduced to little more than scattered wreckage. Fires still burned in the remnants of its command center, though there was little left to salvage. The Dominion had underestimated humanity again, and it had cost them dearly. Admiral Raines stood at the observation deck of the HSS Retribution, watching as salvage drones scoured the remains for anything useful. The battle had been swift, decisive, surgical as planned. But he knew it wouldn't be the last. Commander Nathan Solis approached, his expression unreadable. "The Dominion fleet isn't responding to distress calls from Velka 9. Either they're too afraid to face us, or they're planning something bigger." Raines folded his arms. We've backed them into a corner. The next move will be desperation. Major Lillian Carter's voice cut through the bridge's comms. Admiral, we just intercepted a transmission from deep within Dominion space. Let's hear it. Carter's face appeared on the main screen, her features tight with concern. The Dominion High Command just declared us a Category Omega threat. That's their highest classification, reserved for species deemed existential dangers. Silence filled the room. Everyone understood what that meant. Solus exhaled. So, they're calling for total war. Carter nodded. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon they have. They'll throw everything at us. Rains wasn't surprised. He had anticipated this reaction, but hearing it confirmed was something else entirely. The Dominion had fought other wars before, but never against an enemy like humanity. They had never fought against an opponent who learned, who adapted, who fought not just with strength, but with ruthless, calculated aggression. They think they can drown us in numbers, Rains said, turning back toward the void outside. They don't realize that we don't fight like them. We don't play by their rules. Solus nodded, though there was a shadow of doubt in his expression. Even so, Admiral, this isn't just a fleet anymore. This is the entire Dominion war machine. We're talking about hundreds of battle groups, millions of soldiers, weapons we haven't even seen before. We'll fight smarter, Rains said simply, and we'll fight harder. Carter tapped at her console. That's not the worst part. Our spies have confirmed that the Dominion is reaching out to the other major empires. They're trying to rally the entire galactic community against us. That was the real problem. Humanity had just made its mark in the galaxy, and already they were being painted as a threat to every other species. If the Dominion succeeded in convincing the neutral factions to join their war, Earth wouldn't be facing a single empire. They would be facing the combined might of the galaxy. A lesser species might have surrendered, might have tried to negotiate, to find a diplomatic way out. But humans weren't wired that way. Rains turned to his officers, his voice carrying a quiet steel. We send a message of our own. Solus arched an eyebrow. And what's that? We show them why making an enemy of Earth is the last mistake they'll ever make. Across the fleet, the order went out. War preparations began. Humanity would not be crushed. Humanity would conquer. The Dominion wasted no time. Within days of the Velka 9 massacre, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Entire battle groups were being mobilized, fleets stretching for light years converging toward human-occupied space. The Dominion had called for total war, and the galaxy had answered. Admiral Rains stood in the command center of the HSS Retribution, staring at the vast network of enemy movements projected onto the holotable. Red dots swarmed like a plague, each one representing a fleet hell-bent on humanity's destruction. Commander Nathan Solus exhaled sharply beside him. We're looking at a coalition of over 12 species. The Dominion pulled every favor they had. Even the Teralis, their sworn enemies, have agreed to a temporary alliance to wipe us out. Rains wasn't surprised. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had introduced fear into a galaxy that had long thought itself superior, and nothing united old enemies like fear. Major Carter's voice came through the tactical channel. Sir, intelligence confirms the main fleet is massing near the Trion Expanse. If they push through, they'll reach our outer colonies within a week. Solus ran a hand through his hair. We can't stop a force that large in open battle. Even with all our tech, all our tactics, they'll overwhelm us. Rains remained silent for a moment. Then he looked up. We don't fight them in open battle. Solus frowned. Then how? We bleed them, Rains said. We don't let them bring the war to us. We take the war to them. A slow grin spread across Carter's face. "You're talking about hit and run." "Not just hit and run," Rains clarified. "Total disruption. We don't just attack them, we cripple them. We cut supply lines, sabotage their command networks, turn every planet between here and Earth into a death trap. They think they're marching toward victory, but by the time they get here, they'll be broken." Solus let out a low chuckle. "Guerrilla warfare, but on a galactic scale." Rains nodded. "It's what humans do best." The plan was set in motion immediately. Strike teams were deployed to enemy supply routes, planting sleeper agents and sabotage cells within key logistics hubs. Covert operations hit Dominion fuel depots, causing critical shortages before battles could even begin. Stealth fleets harassed the enemy's long-range scouts, making it impossible for them to get accurate intelligence. And then, the real attacks began. At Zeltrak Station, the Dominion's primary resupply point, human infiltrators disabled automated defenses minutes before an assault fleet arrived. Explosions ripped through the station's infrastructure, and before the enemy could even mount a counterattack, the humans were gone. At Bax 5, an industrial world supplying Dominion warships, a series of accidents triggered catastrophic chain reactions in their primary shipyards. Within hours, hundreds of vessels were reduced to burning husks. At Velok Prime, one of the Dominion's key communications hubs, cyber warfare teams unleashed a digital plague that caused confusion and miscommunication among the coalition forces. Battle plans were scrambled, reinforcements were misrouted, and in some cases, Dominion ships fired on each other. The galaxy had never seen war waged like this. The Dominion, so used to drawn-out battles fought with honor and predictable tactics, found itself flailing against an invisible enemy. Humanity didn't fight with brute force. They fought with relentless ingenuity. And then came the real turning point. A Dominion dreadnought, the Vector, carrying a high-ranking war council, was en route to the front lines. It was a mobile fortress, supposedly untouchable. But the humans had other plans. A single stealth corvette, HSS Phantom, managed to slip past the Dominion escort. Aboard it were some of the most elite soldiers humanity had ever trained. They boarded the Vector, cutting through the ship's defenses like ghosts in the dark. Within an hour, the Dominion's war council lay dead, their throats slit in their own war room. By the time the Dominion even realized what had happened, the HSS Phantom was long gone. Panic gripped the coalition. Leaders hesitated. Fleets stalled. For the first time, the war machine ground to a halt, not because of superior firepower, but because the enemy had shattered their confidence. Solus stood beside Rains as they watched the latest battle reports. "They don't know what to do," he said with a grin. "They're used to fighting armies. They don't know how to fight an idea." Rains smirked. "That's because they don't understand what they're up against." Solus folded his arms. "And what's that?" Rains turned, his expression cold and unwavering. "They're fighting humans." The Dominion's war machine was grinding to a halt, but not because of a lack of resources or reinforcements. No, the true enemy wasn't starvation, nor was it attrition. It was uncertainty. The enemy no longer knew where to strike. Every time they massed their forces for a decisive push, their supply lines mysteriously collapsed. Every time they attempted to regroup, their fleet commanders wound up dead, their warships sabotaged. They were fighting ghosts. Admiral Rains stood at the helm of the HSS Retribution, watching the endless sea of stars before him. Reports from intelligence were clear. The Dominion was stalling. Their coalition allies were second-guessing their commitment. The Taralis, always opportunists, had pulled back their fleets, unwilling to suffer more casualties. The Vorlun hierarchy, once eager to prove their loyalty to the Dominion, were now losing ships faster than they could replace them. But the Dominion itself, they were still holding on. Barely. Commander Nathan Solis stepped up beside him. "We've bled them, Admiral. They're disorganized, demoralized. One more strike, one decisive blow, and we could end this." Rains exhaled. "And what's your suggestion?" Solis tapped on the holo display. The star map zoomed in on a single point. Primaris 1, the Dominion's true homeworld. Not just a military hub, but the beating heart of their empire. "You want to take the war to their capital?" Rains asked, raising an eyebrow. Solis nodded. "They think we're just hit-and-run raiders. They assume we'll stay in the shadows. But if we strike Primaris 1, if we cripple them where it hurts, they'll have no choice but to surrender." Major Carter chimed in through the comms. "He's right. If we destroy their leadership, the Dominion collapses. No one else in the coalition will keep fighting without them." Rains studied the hologram for a long moment. This was it. The final move in the game. The Dominion had declared total war. Now, humanity would finish it. "We do it," he said finally. "We take the capital, and we end this war." The battle for Primaris 1 began with fire and fury. The HSS Retribution led the charge, emerging from slipstream space with the full force of humanity's combined fleet. The Dominion had fortified the system, deploying dozens of battle groups and planetary defenses. But none of that mattered. The humans didn't fight fair. Electronic warfare teams hijacked enemy communications, feeding them false orders. Dominion fleets turned against each other in the chaos, mistaking allies for enemies. Precision orbital strikes hammered key infrastructure, cutting off power grids, command centers, and planetary shields. And then the ground invasion began. Elite human shock troops deployed across the capital city of Vecta Prime, where the Dominion's ruling war council had barricaded themselves in the Citadel of Lords. The Dominion, once a proud empire of conquerors, now found itself under siege. Nathan Solis led the assault himself, cutting through the last of the Dominion's defenders. He and his strike team breached the War Council's chambers, weapons raised. The Dominion lords, once so arrogant and untouchable, now cowered before them. One of them, a high-ranking warlord, hissed through his fanged maw. This is impossible. We are the Dominion. You are lesser than us." Solis leveled his rifle at the alien's head. "Not anymore." A single shot rang out. Admiral Rains watched from orbit as the Dominion's surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. Their once mighty empire brought to its knees, not by sheer numbers, not by superior firepower, but by ruthless strategy. The war was over. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as a minor player, not as another species to be pushed around, but as a force to be feared. And the galaxy would never forget. The war was over, but peace was not guaranteed. The Dominion's surrender sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Their once mighty fleets drifted aimlessly, leaderless and fractured. Their allies, once so eager to fight humanity, now scrambled to distance themselves from the losing side. Some worlds rejoiced in the fall of their oppressors. Others feared what would come next. Humanity had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. But now, the real question remained. What would they do with their victory? Admiral Rains sat alone in his private quarters aboard the HSS Retribution, staring at the latest reports. Across former Dominion space, revolts had erupted. Entire colonies that had once been enslaved were rising up, purging their former overlords. Some called for independence, others called for revenge, and some called for human rule. A soft chime rang through the cabin. The door slid open, revealing Major Carter. She saluted sharply before stepping inside. "We have a problem, sir," she said. Rains set down his datapad. Just one? Carter didn't smile. More like a dozen. Reports are coming in from the outer Dominion sectors. Some of their military governors refuse to acknowledge the surrender. They've declared themselves warlords, rallying whatever fleets they have left. Rains exhaled. Of course they have. Carter hesitated. And there's something else. The coalition is uneasy. The same species that were once willing to fight us now see us as the next galactic superpower. Some are already whispering that humanity is the new threat. Rains leaned back in his chair. He had expected this. No empire simply won a war and walked away without consequences. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. But fear was a fragile thing. It could turn into respect, or it could turn into hatred. Before he could respond, the intercom crackled. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Terran High Council, Priority 1. Rains glanced at Carter, then nodded. Patch it through. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Chancellor Elias Monroe, Earth's highest-ranking political leader. His expression was unreadable. Admiral Rains, Monroe said, his voice measured. Congratulations on your victory. Rains inclined his head. Thank you, sir. Monroe's eyes darkened. But I'm afraid we have little time to celebrate. The Dominion is broken but not destroyed. Rogue warlords are already rallying their forces, and worse, the galactic community sees us as an unstable power. If we don't act swiftly, we risk another war before this one is even cold. Rains understood. What's the Council's decision? Monroe took a deep breath. We occupy the Dominion's core worlds. We stabilize the region under human governance. Carter's eyes widened slightly. Even Rains felt the weight of those words. You want us to rule them? Rains asked carefully. Temporarily, Monroe clarified. We don't have to hold their entire empire, just the key systems. If we don't, another power will, and the last thing we need is another galactic warlord rising up to finish what the Dominion started. Rains folded his arms. And what happens when we do take control? Do we leave? Do we stay? How long before humanity becomes just another empire? Monroe's face was unreadable. That depends on what happens next. The transmission cut out. Carter exhaled. We just won the war, and now we're about to start something bigger. Rains nodded slowly. He knew what came next wouldn't be about battles or fleets. It would be about power, and power had a way of changing everything. The occupation of the Dominion's core worlds began swiftly. Humanity moved with surgical precision, deploying fleets to strategic locations, securing vital infrastructure, and ensuring that no warlord could rise from the ashes of the shattered empire. At first, the remnants of the Dominion fought back. Scattered military units, desperate to reclaim their lost glory, launched ambushes against human patrols. Terrorist cells, fueled by hatred for their new rulers, detonated explosives in key government centers. But none of it was enough. The Terran forces had fought too long, too hard, to be undone by desperate insurgents. For every attack, humanity responded with overwhelming force. For every rebellion, there was swift retaliation. Admiral Rains oversaw the operation from the bridge of the HSS Retribution, watching as his soldiers secured one Dominion world after another. Commander Solis stepped up beside him. Most of their resistance is broken, he said. The few warlords left are fighting each other more than they're fighting us. Rains studied the holodisplay. Dominion space, once a chaotic mess of civil war, was slowly stabilizing, under human control. And the rest of the galaxy? Rains asked. Solis hesitated. They're watching. The Teralis, the Vorlon, the other species who once backed the Dominion. They're nervous. Some think we'll become conquerors. Others think we'll collapse under our own weight. Rains sighed. And what do you think? Solis smirked. I think we just put ourselves at the center of the galactic stage, and everyone's waiting to see what we do next. In the halls of the Dominion's former capital, Vecta Prime, humanity's occupation was beginning to take shape. Major Carter walked through the newly established command center, watching as Terran officials worked to organize the planet's shattered government. Former Dominion administrators, now forced to work under human oversight, muttered bitterly as they compiled planetary reports. Armed soldiers stood watch over them, ensuring compliance. A Dominion governor, a reptilian creature known as High Speaker Keltar Ven, sat before her, his scaled face contorted in barely suppressed rage. This is not governance, Keltar spat. This is occupation. Carter leaned forward. That's because it is an occupation. Keltar let out a low growl. And how long do you think you can hold it? The galaxy will not allow humanity to seize control of our empire. You may have won the war, but you cannot hold on to victory forever. Carter's expression was cold. We don't need to hold it forever. Just long enough to make sure the right people are in charge when we leave. Keltar narrowed his eyes. And who decides who is right? Carter smiled. We do. Despite human control over Dominion space, threats still loomed. Deep in the uncharted regions of the galaxy, something watched. A shadowy figure stood aboard a darkened command bridge, its form obscured by swirling mist. Behind it, a group of hooded figures murmured in an alien tongue. The humans have proven themselves formidable, one voice said. They have accomplished what none before them could. They are dangerous, another agreed, but they are also reckless. Their empire is built on force, not stability. A third voice, older and colder, spoke last. Then let us ensure they never find stability. Let us remind them that in the darkness of the void, there are things far older and far deadlier than them. The hooded figures nodded in unison, and the shadows moved. Back on Vecta Prime, Admiral Rains stood on the balcony of the former Dominion Palace, overlooking the city below. Human banners flew where Dominion emblems once stood. Armed patrols moved through the streets. The once mighty empire of conquerors now lived under human rule. Solis stepped beside him. So, what now? Rains didn't answer immediately. He looked out at the stars, knowing that their victory had only led to greater dangers. The war had ended, but the next battle was just beginning. The shadows moved unseen, whispering through the void between the stars. Humanity had conquered the Dominion, but something far older had been watching. And now, it was moving. Admiral Rains sat in his command chamber aboard the HSS Retribution, reviewing intelligence reports. The Dominion's remaining forces were either surrendering or tearing each other apart. The occupation was holding, for now, but the weight of their victory was already pressing down on him. Commander Solis entered the chamber without a word, dropping a datapad onto the table. His expression was grim. Rains picked up the datapad. What am I looking at? Solis folded his arms. A pattern, one we shouldn't be seeing. The report contained star maps marked with strange anomalies. At first glance, they looked like nothing, just deep space disturbances, unexplored voids. But the more Rains studied them, the more he saw the truth. These systems, Rains muttered. They're dying. Solis nodded. Sensors picked up something strange in multiple Dominion territories. Planets with sudden mass extinctions, orbital stations going completely dark, entire fleets disappearing. No distress calls, no debris, just gone. Rains leaned forward. Are we dealing with a rogue faction? Solis hesitated. We don't think this is Dominion-related, sir. Some of these star systems weren't even occupied, and yet something erased them. A chill ran down Raines's spine. The Dominion had been a brutal empire, but they had been predictable. This question mark. This was something else. Where was the last incident? Raines asked. Solus tapped the datapad. A single name appeared. Zelvaris 4, a fringe colony world deep in former Dominion space. No communications for over a week, Solus said. It was supposed to be a minor refueling station. Population of 600,000. Our scout sent a probe. Raines glanced up. And? Solus hesitated before swiping on the datapad. The holographic display flickered to life, showing footage from the probe. At first, nothing but static. Then, darkness. The planet below was eerily silent, covered in deep black scars. No lights, no movement. Cities were still intact, yet lifeless. No visible damage, but every building looked wrong, as if something had emptied them. Then the footage cut to black. That was the last transmission, Solus said. After that, the probe was gone. Raines set the datapad down slowly. This isn't a rebellion, he said. No, Solus agreed. This is something else. Raines clenched his jaw. He had spent his career fighting enemies he could understand. The Dominion, for all their cruelty, had been alive. But whatever this was, it felt like death itself. The HSS Revenant arrived at Zelvaris 4 within the week. It was one of humanity's best reconnaissance vessels, outfitted with stealth tech and deep space sensors. Major Carter led the team personally, landing in one of the colony's main cities. She stepped out of the dropship, pulse rifle in hand, her boots crunching against the eerily silent streets. The city was untouched, but empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Doors were left open, meals half-eaten on tables. It was as if the entire colony had simply vanished. Jesus, one of her soldiers muttered. This is worse than a battlefield. Carter kept moving, scanning the area. Then she stopped. Her HUD flickered. A whisper echoed in her helmet. A strange, static-filled voice. You are not ready. Then the lights above flickered, and the shadows began to move. Back on the HSS Retribution, alarms blared. Sir, an officer shouted. We just lost contact with the Revenant. One moment they were there, and then nothing. Raines shot up from his seat. Get me visuals. The screen flickered. At first, nothing but static. Then, an image, a single frame, the ruins of Zelvaris 4, and something standing in the center of the city. Tall, featureless, blacker than space itself. Watching. The transmission cut. Silence fell across the bridge. Then, slowly, Solus exhaled. Admiral, he said quietly. What the hell did we just wake up? The silence that followed was thick with tension. The bridge crew of the HSS Retribution remained frozen, staring at the dark screen where the last image of Zelvaris 4 had played. Admiral Raines felt the weight settle in his gut. He had fought wars, seen entire fleets reduced to wreckage, watched civilizations crumble under orbital bombardments. But this was something else. This was an enemy he couldn't see, and it had just wiped out one of his best teams. Solus exhaled sharply. Orders, sir? Raines's mind raced. The smart move, the logical move, was to pull back, report this anomaly to the Terran High Council, and let scientists and analysts break it down. But Major Carter was down there. His soldiers were down there. He wasn't leaving them behind. Prep a recon team, Raines ordered. We're going to Zelvaris 4. Solus tensed. Sir, we don't even know what we're up against. Raines met his gaze. Then it's time we found out. Hours later, the HSS Revenant 2, a heavily armed infiltration cruiser, descended into the dead skies of Zelvaris 4. The storm clouds above were unnatural, black, twisting, alive. The sensors struggled to penetrate the haze, but Raines didn't need a perfect reading. He could feel it in his bones. Something was wrong here. Aboard the dropship, the retrieval team double-checked their weapons. Experimental plasma rifles, motion trackers, and enough explosives to level a city block. "Remember," Rains said over the comms, "this isn't a rescue mission. We don't know if anyone's left alive." The dropship doors slid open, revealing the ruins of the city below, and the emptiness. Buildings stood intact. Vehicles remained parked along the streets. Streetlights flickered in eerie, rhythmic pulses. But there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, just a city abandoned in an instant. The team moved forward cautiously. "Eyes up," Solus muttered, scanning the rooftops. "This place feels like a goddamn grave." Rains gritted his teeth. It wasn't a grave. A grave had bodies. This was worse. They found the HSS Revenant near the city center, untouched but eerily silent. The ship's exterior was fine. No battle scars, no forced entry. Yet the crew was missing. Rains stepped inside, rifle raised. The interior was intact, but the air was thick with something unnatural. The lights flickered. Shadows seemed longer than they should have been, and in the command center, a single message had been scrawled across the walls in black, tar-like fluid. "They are not dead. They were taken." Rains felt a cold chill crawl up his spine. Then his comm crackled. "Sir," came a shaky voice, "you need to see this." Rains followed the signal to a side alley. A single figure stood in the shadows, helmet cracked, armor scorched. Major Carter. Alive. But when she turned, Rains saw her eyes. They weren't hers anymore, and she started to whisper in a voice that wasn't her own. "They are awake." The air in the alley grew colder as Major Carter's voice rasped through the comms, unnatural and layered, as though something ancient spoke through her. "They are awake." Admiral Rains tightened his grip on his rifle, his instincts screaming at him to fire, to end whatever this was. But this was Carter. One of his best. He couldn't. Not yet. "Carter," he said, his voice steady despite the dread clawing at him. "What's happening? Who's awake?" Her head tilted unnaturally, her blank, hollow eyes locking onto his. "The ones who came before. The ones who wait beyond. You woke them when you tore the Dominion apart." Commander Solus stepped forward, his weapon trained on her. "Admiral, she's not herself. We need to—" Before he could finish, the ground trembled. A low, resonant hum pulsed through the city, vibrating in their bones. The shadows around them stretched and twisted, no longer bound by the laws of light or physics. From the edges of the streets, tall, featureless figures emerged, blacker than the void, their forms shifting like liquid darkness. Rains barked into his comms. "All units, fall back to the dropship, now!" The team didn't hesitate. They opened fire as they retreated, plasma rounds tearing into the figures. The shots seemed to dissipate into nothingness, swallowed by the entity's forms. The hum grew louder, drowning out the sound of gunfire. Carter didn't move. She stood there, whispering as the shadows closed in. Rains grabbed Solus. "We're not leaving her." "Sir, she's gone!" Solus shouted, pulling back. "Look at her!" But Rains didn't listen. He charged forward, slamming into Carter and dragging her toward the dropship. Her body was limp, but her lips kept moving, muttering incomprehensible words. The entities surged after them, faster now. The city itself seemed to warp, buildings bending inward, streets cracking as though reality was unraveling. The dropship engines roared to life as the team piled in. Rains threw Carter inside just as one of the shadow figures reached for him. Solus fired a point-blank plasma burst, and for a split second, the entity recoiled, enough time for the doors to slam shut. "Get us out of here," Rains roared. The dropship shot into the sky, the HSS Revenant II waiting above. Behind them, Zelvaris 4 shuddered. The black scars on its surface spread like a disease, consuming the planet. Then, in an instant, it vanished, not destroyed, not shattered, but gone, as if it had never existed. Back aboard the HSS Retribution, the crew worked frantically to stabilize Carter. She was alive, but unresponsive, her vitals erratic. Scientists in hazmat suits scanned her, their faces pale as they whispered about unknown energy signatures and anomalous cellular degradation. Rains stood over her, watching as her lips twitched, still forming silent words. Solus approached, his voice low. "What the hell was that, Admiral? What did we just fight?" Rains didn't answer immediately. His mind raced, piecing together the fragments, Carter's words, the Dominion's collapse, the sudden emergence of these things. Whatever they weren't just a threat. They were a consequence. "We didn't just win a war," he said finally. "We broke something. Something older than the Dominion. Older than us." Solus frowned. "You think this is our fault?" "I think we kicked over a rock," Rains replied, "and something crawled out from underneath." The comms crackled. A transmission from the Terran High Council. "Admiral Rains," Chancellor Monroe's voice cut through, sharp and urgent. "We've lost contact with 3 more systems near Zelvaris 4. Reports of shadows. What's happening out there?" Rains exchanged a glance with Solus. Then he straightened, his resolve hardening. "We've got a new enemy, sir," he said, "and it's not one we can fight with railguns." Monroe's silence was heavy. Then, "What do you propose?" Rains looked at Carter, still whispering in her trance. He thought of the Dominion's fall, humanity's rise, and the cost they hadn't seen coming. "We find out what they are," he said. "We figure out how to stop them, and if we can't stop them, we make damn sure they regret waking up." Months later, the galaxy remained on edge. The Dominion was a memory, its worlds now under human stewardship. But the shadows lingered, a quiet menace spreading through uncharted space. Humanity adapted, as it always had. Fleets were refitted with experimental sensors to detect the entities. Scientists raced to understand the unknown energy signatures. Soldiers trained for a war no one could fully comprehend. And in a secure lab aboard the HSS Retribution, Major Carter awoke. Her eyes were her own again, but haunted. She spoke of endless voids, of voices that whispered from beyond time, of beings that had waited eons for a crack in the universe to slip through. "They're coming," she warned, "and they're not afraid of us." Rains stood beside her, his face etched with determination. "Good," he said, "because we're not afraid of them either." The war with the Dominion had ended, but humanity's true fight, for survival, for its place in the cosmos, had just begun. And whatever came next, they would face it as they always had, with fire, with cunning, and with an unyielding will to endure.